This is the Zac Anesbury Show.
Welcome. On today's podcast clip, we have our very first repeat guest, Bob Moore. Welcome back, Bob. So for those of you who don't know, Bob is actually the very first return guest on the Zac Anesbury Show. So I guess it's commiserations to you, congratulations, but ultimately thank you from me and the community. For those of us who haven't listened to the first episode, and I would highly recommend they do, it's an excellent piece there. Did you want to provide us with a bit of an overview as to who you are and your background?
Sure. I am now retired from everyday work as a marketer and market researcher. I had about a 30-year career in packaged goods marketing, about 8 years in brand management, 8 years in customer marketing, and the remaining in insights. And I worked for lots of pretty big packaged goods companies and a few small ones here in the U.S. I started my career at Nabisco Biscuit Company. I worked at Campbell Soup. I went back to Nabisco. When Nabisco was bought by Kraft Foods, I lost my job there and I had to leave, and I went to Sara Lee, and I worked on their household and body care division, running the Kiwi shoe polish brand. I left there to go to a smaller company called Irving Tissue, where I was a marketing director on Scotty's facial tissues. And I also helped them run a brand up in Canada called Royale, which had paper towels, bathroom tissue, and facial tissues. After I left Irving when they moved our headquarters from the Philadelphia area, which is where I was living, to Boston. And unfortunately, my timing was horrible. I did it right when we were entering the Great Recession of 2008, very end of 2008. I spent some time doing marketing consulting back at Sara Lee, where I had worked before, and eventually they rehired me. Excuse me, and that's where I got my insights career started. I did consumer insights as well as business analytics. S.C. Johnson bought the Kiwi shoe polish brand, and then I went to Wisconsin for the last 10 years of my career, where I worked in business analytics for S.C. Johnson. Now, while I was there was when we got introduced to the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, and that gave me the opportunity to think about, to meet people who had come to visit. And then we had a sabbatical leave program at SEJ, and I asked if I could go to Ehrenberg Bass on sabbatical and sort of do an academic sabbatical. And I did that in 2019. I was there for about 10 weeks, spent a lot of time with Zac at that point. We did some stuff. We even have an ANSMAC paper, I think, that we did together. And and then I came back and finished my career. And then when I was getting to the end, I'd asked Byron Sharp, if I could come back after I had left S.C. Johnson, because I thought what the Institute does is important. I'm interested in it. I thought I had some things to contribute. And he said yes. And so I was able to come back. And so early in 2023, I think from mid-February to the end of March, I was at the Institute again, trying to set up some collaborations so I could do some research after I returned to the U.S. So that's sort of my story. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I follow some people. I think most of the time, you might kind of call what I do trolling a little bit. If I see someone write something that's kind of silly, I might point out why it might be a little silly in a very nice way. But generally, I'm espousing Ehrenberg Bass principles in my posts and supporting the Institute. One of the very fun things I did when I was there last time was I helped the Institute prepare for their mental availability and physical availability summit. They had summits that they had in Sydney, London, and New York. I started out at the very beginning with most of the people who were developing their seminars and helped them refine them and sort of make them maybe a little more relevant and understandable to practitioners. And I think that's really my value to the Institute, is that I understand the principles pretty well, And I also spent a lot of time in industry. And so I have a different perspective and can sort of help people tailor their presentations. And so I got a chance to do that while I was there. And my reward is I was invited to New York for the symposium in June, which was a lot of fun to go back and see everybody when they came back to the U.S. to give the seminar, and I could see the finished product too. So it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Far out. Yeah. So 2019, we first met. That feels just like yesterday. So I remember very vividly sitting down at the cafe on campus, Abbots and Kinney, having coffee pretty much every morning, talking about the gym that you were going. You're always swimming in the morning. And then mostly we're talking about the paper that we're working on and the data and how we're going to frame our story. So yeah, I remember those days quite vividly and quite fondly, actually. And then I think you went back to the States and we recorded the first podcast then. It must have been early 2020. And that must have been...
it was in 2019 because
it?
And it was on the 4th of July, you might recall.
Okay. Far out.
Yeah, because there was a parade I was supposed to go to on that day.
Yeah, that's right. I remember the parade part. I just wasn't sure which year it was. Okay, that makes sense. I should probably know that a little bit better. So you've been up to a hell of a lot since that, and you filled us up quite nicely. So one of the things that you said early on was that you have since retired. So you're working at SC Johnson, and now you've decided that you're going to kind of wrap it up. How long have you been retired for, and how are you finding that sort of different lifestyle?
I've been retired for 2.5 years, and I have to admit I don't miss working for money.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges with work for me is, when you work for a company, obviously you're doing things that, that you're being asked to do that are like in the company's interest. And it's maybe not always as much fun as you'd like to have. And so one of the benefits of being in academia is not all the time, but a lot of the time, probably a lot more of the time, you get to pursue your own interests. And I had a really good bosses at SC Johnson, and especially at the end of my career, they kind of allowed me to do a lot of fun stuff, but there was still some stuff that was work. And I think I just had enough of it. I was 65 years old and just thought it was a time for me to stop working for money. I've sort of hung out my shingle as a consultant. I did consult with Sarah Lee for about 14 months before they rehired me. And so I'm available to help people out. But the only thing I really want to do is marketing science. But I haven't really been beating the bushes trying to get more business, right? So I might have a gig coming up pretty soon, but I really haven't tried to work. I'm very fortunate that I don't need to work for money.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do what I want to do. And I think the thing about retirement that I like the best is that I can do what I want to do when I want to do it. And when I want to stop doing it, I can. So I do a lot of projects around our property. We have a pretty big property here that I live on. We're on a lake, which gives me some stuff to do down on the lake, but also in the yard. And sometimes I do big projects and I'll go out and I'll work on them for 3 or 4 hours and then I'm tired of it and I can just stop. And I don't have to keep going, and then I'll go back the next day and I'll do some more. And in a couple of weeks, I might finish it. But it's kind of nice to have that freedom. And I think that's what a lot of people like about not having to work for a living anymore.
Yeah.
I do miss especially all the young friends that I had at SCJ. When you support marketing, you're supporting a younger clientele. Marketing is a young person's business, particularly brand management. And I think that's what I miss the most is my interaction with younger people. All the people I associated with, they went from their 30s all of a sudden to people mostly in their 60s and 70s. And then everybody is retired versus having careers and starting families and so on. So the younger people tend to be much more interesting. I'm afraid I'm getting kind of boring now. I hope not, but I do miss that. That's the big downside from not going to work every day.
Yeah, I kind of can relate to that actually when you're talking about, who you spend the time with. Funnily enough, a lot of my friends outside of work, especially are mostly 40, 50 plus. Funnily enough, for some reason, I just enjoy their company. But at work, like I teach marketing principles, which is basically marketing 101 class, hundreds of students, and they're always, fresh out of high school, 18, 19-year-old. And I feel like they kind of keep me like young in that sense because, they come in, I hear their new ideas, their new perspectives, their new way of learning, actually. I've noticed a very distinct different want or need of how they actually want to learn. So yeah, no, 100% agree that way.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't get to interact with people like that very much anymore. So
Mm,
that's the big void in my life right now, I would say, from being retired. But I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't go back to work. You're only given so many days on Earth,
mm,
and there's still some things I want to do. There's some travel that I've got planned. I want to do some things, that was still with the institute. I've got a couple irons in the fire with Carl, and so we're trying to get some things going. And we'll see how that works out. But at the end of the day, sort of having the freedom of action is a big deal for me.
yeah, doing what you love when you want is sounds phenomenal.
Yeah.
Especially hiking. So I constantly see pictures of you hiking. The envy when I am, really deep into a paper and I desperately love to be outside. Is definitely there. I found a new place. So last time when you visited, I took you through Blair. So I found a new
Yes.
hiking spot for us next time you're down in South Australia.
Okay. I don't know when I'll be back, but I will sign up for that now. I
Yeah.
mean, we're very fortunate here. We live in North Carolina, in a small town called Hickory, which is near the mountains, and within about an hour or less, I can be on a pretty nice trail out in the woods, hiking up to summits
Mm,
with great views, or up water courses to waterfalls. So it's a nice place to live for that.
yeah, absolutely. Um, So when you sort of left SC Johnson, did you feel like you had, I mean, you could have kept working if you really wanted to, I guess. So you must have felt like you achieved everything you wanted to, or was there certain projects that you wish you had just a little bit more time on, or did you just sort of hand them to someone else? What
I
were you?
think it was a good time for me to leave SCJ at the time. And a lot of it had to do actually with sort of the philosophy of marketing. So things have changed there now, so it's not the same. But we had a CMO who was from a company where the velocity that products moved at was very, very much faster than SC Johnson products. And he sort of felt like the way you would grow is be like by driving frequency and loyalty.
Mm,
And he ended up not renewing our sponsorship. And so SEJ is still not a sponsor. So for a little while, I kind of felt like I was being like a little bit of a subversive, in the sense that I was kind of telling people I had always have to give people the right advice as I understand how the world works. And so, of course, and we'll probably talk about this maybe a little bit later, but before I went into packaged goods, I was an actual physical scientist, right? So I'm
mm,
trained as a scientist. I have a PhD in chemistry. And so I know science when I see it. And because I was a scientist for a good more than a decade. And so to me, the stuff that the Institute talks about and presents rings very true to me. And I saw it over and over again. I never saw anything that varied from the laws of growth when I was at SC Johnson, except for the obvious things like where I might see, some, um, a little excess loyalty or something or excess sharing from products that were, in limited distribution or something like that. Sort of the normal things that cause, duplication of purchase not to be exactly perfect, right? So, I would see things like that, but at the end of the day, people were like going a different way from what I knew was true. And, we were going to be doing what I considered to be ineffective marketing. We were abandoning distinctive assets. Just a lot of things like that made it not the place for me anymore. And so it wasn't like they necessarily wanted to get rid of me because I was still contributing, but I could be uncomfortable, to them, and so I kind of had to watch myself a little bit, just because of the difference in philosophy, between what I believed and held true and what I would recommend versus, sort of what the CMO was espousing.
That's really interesting, actually, that you kind of felt like, I guess, some of the culture and some of the philosophies of the company had changed, and therefore maybe you weren't aligned, maybe you weren't the best fit. You probably know, so we're at the University of South Australia, and we're not merging, we're creating a new university with our previous competitors down the road, the University of Adelaide. So they both have very distinct cultures. And so that's one of the key things that people are, I guess, a little bit concerned about is what is the culture of the new university going to be like? And is it going to fit, your own personal views and philosophies? Like if you're aiming for a certain style of career, does that align with the university you were part of? Or does it align with the new university? Do I adjust? Do they adjust? So yeah, there's a whole lot of unknowns here at the moment in that space.
You should talk to Dr. Graham about that when he comes, because he's, in that situation where he's one of the few marketing scientists at his institution, right? So there's a lot of, I asked him, how do you manage this, right? I can't remember his first name. Is it Phil Graham?
Charles Graham?
Charles Graham, yes. Yeah, he was telling me that, he would get students who were taught sort of the Kotlerian view of marketing, and then he would just sort of, kind of have to retrain them. But it was like he was able to coexist at that university with people who were teaching things that were quite different from, what would be taught at the University of South Australia. I think you'll eventually learn to adapt. But I think one of the things that's really nice, is that you have the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, right, which is in some sense separate, from the university departments, right? So the institute can always continue to operate independently, right, being housed at the new university, and then you have an academic department that teaches marketing. Those two things don't have to be the same.
Yeah, ideally they are, but yes, and they're under the leadership of Larry Lockshin when he was our head of school. It very much became like a one entity, and so I think that's people's fear. So, when did I do my undergrad? Quite a while ago now, but during my undergrad, it was what you described that Charlie's situation is now, where I'd be taught Kotler in one course, and then I'd be taught like a sharp sort of Ehrenbergian view in another. And then you'd go back to Kotler, and then you go back to Sharp. And sometimes even in the same semester, you would have people telling you different ways marketing worked.
Yes.
I don't think it helped my GPA, that's for sure. And it very much made me confused. But all of that's out now. So I think, hopefully we're in the position now at the time point where early 2024, for anyone listening, where we're developing curriculum. And then I think they develop the courses in the next few months or whatever. So there's lots of work to be done there. Carl's on it, thankfully. Carl's very good at sort of getting forward a good point of view. I think he's a perfect person for it. I might reach out to Charlie about that. I'm not sure he wants to hear from me. I've been bugging him about a paper, so he might not want to hear from me.
Well, he might want to talk to you about something different.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I love it when he comes here. is very good value. I love chatting to him. But yeah.
Hey guys, it's Zac Anesbury here with just a couple of quick reminders. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, then make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. There are plenty more interviews to come with some of the world's leading marketing academics and practitioners. You do not want to miss these. In the meantime, if you're looking for another way to connect, then follow me on Twitter at Zac Anesbury. That is ZACANESBURY for my take on the marketing issues of the day.
That was The Zac Anesbury Show.